Hello, welcome to this tutorial for AlbumDS. AlbumDS is an application that works as a toolbar for Photoshop. It communicates with Photoshop and therefore both windows have to be visible and available at any time. If you have a two-monitor system, you may place AlbumDS in the second one and rest Photoshop in the first. But if you only have one monitor, like we now, the best option is to place AlbumDS at bottom of your screen and above have Photoshop. Please make sure in Photoshop and color settings to adjust color management rules to convert to working RGB and disable asking. All the three options to ask have to be disabled. This way, Photoshop will not show you a warning screen each time you open a template, you insert an image, etc. Please notice that in the last Macintosh operating system versions, the system will ask you for allowing AlbumDS to control Photoshop. This should be done only one time. In some Windows systems, I suggest setting at the configuration AlbumDS always visible. This means that AlbumDS window will remain on top of all other applications, and it's easier to communicate with Photoshop. The first step to create an album with AlbumDS is by creating a new album file. This is a database file where all album settings will be saved. You have to give it a name, my album test for sample, and select the folder where you wish to save this file. This file will not save the sheets, the spreads. This will be saved in true PSD and JPG independent files, standard files, but it will take control of the used pictures, the created spreads, and the relation among them. Once you have selected the file name and folder, you will be prompted to enter the album size. Please notice that this size should include trimmings. Usually Binder will trim around ½ centimeter, ¼ inch from each side. Therefore, if you want to create an album from 40 by 20 centimeter, or let's work in inches, 20 by 10, you will have to create it usually by 20.5 and 10.5, because this ½ inch will be cut out. ¼ inch for each trimming guide. Input resolution and then click at Save and Close. If your album has a cover or back cover, please input them here. Then click at Save and Close. A new album file will be created and AlbumDS will be ready to accept the new images for your album. Now we will add some images to our album. Just open Finder or your Windows File Explorer, select the images you want to add and drag them into the images list at AlbumDS. AlbumDS works with templates. These templates are shown here at the bottom of the AlbumDS main window. Here you can see a preview of the template, and this is the list of folders with templates. You may select or unselect these folders to load the templates from each folder. But the most important is the autofilter option. This autofilter option, once enabled, means that after having selected pictures in AlbumDS, let's say we select 2 pictures here, AlbumDS will show templates for these 2 pictures. And at the configuration, you may set if applying full filtering, and this means taking account of images orientation, or simply showing templates for the number of images selected. Okay, if we select 3 images, 1 horizontal and 2 vertical, Now it shows templates for these images, like this one. This is with auto filter on. At configuration, please make sure to have selected fill template immediately after drag and drop. And then the easiest way to create a spread is by dragging one of the templates into one of the selected images atop of Album.ds. Drop it, and this will create the spread in Photoshop. You have to wait a few seconds. It depends on the speed of your computer and how fast Photoshop is. Then it will load the images. Here we have our first spread designed with Album.ds. Next step is saving the sheet. Just right click at the Sheets tab over the mouse, or if there are sheets saved over one of the sheets, and select Save Sheet. Select where to save this sheet and give it a name. Usually it should be a number. And make sure you use enough digits to control the number ordering. This is sheet spread number 1. The spread will be saved by Photoshop in PSD format and JPG format, both at the same time. And pictures are marked as used. They are shown with a lower opacity. Also at the picture you can see here's a small thumbnail of the template used for creating this spread. And at the Sheets tab you can see a thumbnail of the sheet and here a preview. If you want to reopen an already designed sheet, just double click at the thumbnail in Album.ds and it will open the PSD document in Photoshop. Let's see now a different way of filling a template. It's important to have in the layers palette the layers shown. Closing here, these are the layers. Now, okay. Once we have selected a couple of images, we can see the templates for these images here bottom. And we may open a template just by double clicking in Album.ds. This will open the template in Photoshop at the size, at the album size we have entered at the start. This is the template ready in Photoshop. You may see there are two shape layers, shape 1 and shape 2. If you enable showing transform controls in the Move tool, you can see that this image is for a whole spread, the whole document, and the second one is the smaller here. Okay. Now, we want to put this image into the large shape layer. Just select the shape layer in Photoshop and double click at the image in Album.ds. The image will be resized, inserted in the document in Photoshop and grouped to the shape layer. The visible part of the image we have just inserted is the one allowed by the layer. Now select the second layer in Photoshop and click at the other image. Double click in Album.ds. This will insert the second image. Please notice that the image is not cut. It is the full image and you can move it with Photoshop Move tool. You can make it larger just by dragging. Make sure to preserve aspect ratio by using Alt or Shift in Windows and put it in your preferred place. Enter to confirm, and this is our second spread already designed. We have to do the same and save the spread. Right click, Save Sheet, give it a name, number 2, and save. This is another easy way to create a spread with Album.ds. Here we have both spreads already designed, and at the pictures list we can see the images are marked as used. Let's take a look at a different way to fill a template with pictures. We are going to select a few pictures in Album DS. Maybe these 4 here. These are vertical pictures. And then we have here a template for 4 vertical pictures. We double click at the template. It will open in Photoshop at the album size. Now we right click over one of the pictures selected in Album DS and select from the menu Autofill template with selected pictures. Album DS will take the 4 pictures and fill the template in Photoshop with these pictures automatically. Once finished, just the same, save sheet, number it, number 3, and we will get the PSD and JPG files. Let's take a look at the file at Finder. This is the PSD file for number 1, JPG, number 2, and number 3. They are standard PSD files. Let's now create a spread from scratch without any template. I'm closing this one. In the sheets, right-click to get the menu and select New Sheet. This will create a new empty sheet in Photoshop. This sheet will have only a fill color layer to change the background color. Now, at Photoshop, select the rectangle tool. We have a rectangle tool, rectangle with rounded corner, abstract forms, ellipse tool. To start, select the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle in Photoshop. I'm changing the fill color to make it more visible. And with the Move tool, this is a vectorial shape layer in Photoshop. You can move it, you can resize it. You may duplicate it using layer, duplicate layer, or you may duplicate it here by pressing Alt and dragging. This will create copies of the layer. Photoshop will help you to align layers with these red lines. And I would suggest you place the layers in the same order you see them in the document. This means this is the first layer, it should be at top in the layers palette. This is the second, the third one, and this is the last one. Once you have all shape layers ready in the document, you may select your pictures and fill the template. Use any way to fill them you prefer. For example, the automatic one. We select 4 pictures, right-click, autofill template with selected pictures. You only have to wait until Album DS and Photoshop finishes the task. In case you need to move any image, just select it in Photoshop. Use the Move tool and place it in the correct position. Finally, as always, save the sheet. Right-click, saving, number. And our 4th spread is finished. Let's start now explaining masks. We create a new document, sheet, new sheet. And we draw a rectangle in the middle, just to place one picture. Okay. Double click at the picture and it will be grouped to this shape layer in Photoshop. At Album DS, select the mask. Now just double click at a mask after having selected the shape layer in Photoshop. Double click at a mask and this mask will be added to the shape layer and mask the picture that is grouped to it. Here. This is the effect. Let's move slightly the picture, the image. So, okay. This is a mask applied to a picture. You may create easily transitions between pictures. Let's remove this image and let's start creating two layers, two shape layers overlapped. This is the first one and the second. Okay. One at left and one at right, overlapping. At the top one, we will apply a transitional mask here, this one, ending with a transition at right. We double click and the mask is applied to the shape layer, the top one. The effect is not visible until we add to a couple of pictures. We select now this picture for the top one, double click in Album DS, and it will be added to the document in Photoshop. And regarding that it has a green background, we have to select another one also with a green background for the right side. For example, this one. We select the other shape layer in Photoshop and double click at the image in Album DS. Now we have in Photoshop a smooth transition between two images that is easily done with a mask from Album DS. Album DS also includes backgrounds, high-resolution backgrounds and pattern ones. Let's make these images a bit smaller. Okay. Any template in Album DS or any new document created in Album DS has a color fill layer at bottom. Just double click at this icon and you may select a different color for your background. Or you may select a color from the image itself here. For your background. Okay. And you may add one of the backgrounds included with Album DS. Double click at a background and it will be added to the document open in Photoshop at the bottom of the layers palette. Once it is here, you can see this is a brown background, but if you prefer a different color background, just place the fill color layer above the background and set the fusion mode of the color fill layer to color or a different one. It depends on the texture of the background, but usually color blending is correct. Now you can change the color just as before to create a different effect in your background. This way you will have infinite variations of background just with the one included with Album DS. Album DS includes also clip art. Clip art can be added to the document open in Photoshop just by double clicking at it. Sample. Double click at this clip art and it will be placed at top of the layers palette in Photoshop, and now we can drag it, resize it, change the color, etc. Use the Move tool in Photoshop to resize the clip art, and if you want to change the color, place a color fill layer above the clip art, set a color, and now group it to the clip art. This can be done by pressing Ctrl-Alt-G. This means the color fill layer will only affect the clip art below. I've got here a red clip art. Opacity can also be changed, of course, to create any effect. Album.ds styles are a shortcut for the photoshopped effects. For example, if you want to add a white stroke with a shadow to this image in Photoshop, just select the shape layer, the rectangle, double-click at the effect in style in Album.ds, and the effect will be added in Photoshop. Here you can see the result of adding a white stroke and a shadow. There are many styles available in Album.ds. Just double-click and it will be added to the document open in Photoshop. Let's speak now about frames. In Album.ds you will find three types of frames. The most simple ones are this here, and you have to select the shape layer in Photoshop, double-click at the frame in Album.ds, input the size in pixels you want, let's say you want 60 pixels wide, and the distance from the border. Insert, and the frame will be at the border of the image in Photoshop. Another type of frame is this one here. You have to select again the shape layer in Photoshop, double-click at the frame in Album.ds, and this frame will be added to the layers palette. Here, our image is now framed. And the most complicated ones are the last here. You can see there are some drawings, some decoration included, and if you apply this frame to an image, the decorations must keep the aspect ratio, or they will look distorted. Therefore, when you apply such kind of frames, Album.ds will calculate the size of the new frame and redesign the decorations to avoid distorting them. It will take some more time than with a normal frame, but you will be sure that the decorations will look good. Album.ds includes some extras, many of them to improve the look of your images. You have to select in Photoshop the layer for the image, and at Album.ds at the Extras panel, select one of the options. For example, we'll apply now an old glamour. This effect will be applied to a copy of the image. Then you have the original one, and above is the changed, improved. And you may still change the opacity to lower the effect, or even apply a mask if you want to only to apply this effect partially to the image. Let's now take a look at one of the main features included with Album.ds. This is the designer. The designer is very similar to our other album design application, Album.td. To use the designer, you only have to select some pictures here from the left and drag it into the design area, and Album.ds will build a design for you. You may change the layout by selecting a different one from the list at bottom, and you may customize the images and the design by dragging or changing the size of the images and layers. To internally drag an image, for example, to move this image to the right, press Ctrl or Command and drag. To resize it, press Shift and drag. If you want to resize the layer, select it and drag. And if you want to move it, just click and drag. Once you have finished your design, you have to click Export to Photoshop, and Album.ds will create the same spread in Album.ds format, in PSD format. Once the design has finished, you have to click at Sheets, like always, and save the sheet as you are used to. Name it, it's sheet number 5, and save. Regarding that, almost all templates in Album.ds are in panoramic format. The designer is the way to create the cover and back cover. Actually, by right-clicking at the templates in Album.ds, you will find two options: Design Cover and Design Back. This will open the designer with the size entered for your cover in the album size at the start. Finally, let me explain you how the wizard works in Album.ds. The wizard is a way to create a full layout of the album, the whole album, including all spreads and assigning templates to the spreads. For the sample, I will only create 3 spreads, but the process is the same for all. You have here place for your spreads. You have to drag the pictures you want in the first one to number 1. If you want these pictures for number 2, drag them in number 2, and so on for all sheets. This is distributing images into sheets for your album. Then click at the layouts list, and it will show you the possible templates for these images. You only have to click and drag the template into the sheet, and it will be assigned to these images. Same for the second sheet, just select it, drag a template, and do the same for the third one, drag a template. Now you have to select the spreads you want to export, first to third, and click at this button here. This will start the process in Photoshop. You have to select the target folder for the new spreads, and this will start the process in Photoshop and create all the spreads for you automatically. Once the exporting task has ended, you will find the new sheets here included in Album.ds Sheets panel. If you want to modify one of the spreads designed, double-click at it and it will open in Photoshop. For example, if you want to move this image to the right side, just select both layers, the shape layer and the image layer, and drag it to the right. And if you want to change two images, for example, this image with this other one, select the first image and the second by pressing Ctrl or Command if you are using a Mac, and in Album.ds at the pictures list, right-click and select from the menu Edit, Swap Pictures. This will interchange both. If you want to rotate an image in Album.ds, please use the rotation options from the Pictures menu. Rotate, picture or shape. Input the desired rotation in degrees, let's say 5 degrees to right, and click at Rotate. This will rotate both the shape layer and the image. And remember, you can easily change the background color in Album.ds and Photoshop. Finally, please select the sheets, Save Sheet, and save it with the same name to overwrite the old file.